every time I'm editing these things, I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to make it seem natural, but it doesn't feel natural.
You always
So
have such
Natural
gold. We
again.
have
at the
gold
tone,
after.
please leave a message for Jack Vaca. Yeah. You
Yeah.
could do the whole intro.
We bobbing on the cryptocurrency chimney climb. Blockchains will travel like a smooth design. Soon as the wakes up the jewel.
Hello and welcome back to Cryptocurrency, where we interview and discuss the most interesting projects, people, and events happening in Web3. We're your hosts, Brett Lindstrom and Jack Vaca, the founders of Fish and Chips, a creative studio delivering impeccable, incredible, and insanely effective design, branding, messaging, and community support. Before we get started, please remember to smash that subscribe and join us in the chat. Hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us out a ton. Today, we have Justice Conder, governance at Polygon Labs, technologist, visionary, and Taoist. What's up, man?
What is up? I'm intimidated by this intro. It is so good. I feel like I need to turn my own energy up like by 6 notches.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
go.
well, that I'm good for it too. You know that I'm good for it.
Awesome.
Red Bull, did you have enough?
I'm in the process. I hope my it hits fast enough. Yeah.
Well, we're really glad to have you on the show. You and I initially met at Polygon, and we just vibed super hard with all the other people that were really into DAOs. And that was kind of like the narrative back then, the DAOs and all of this stuff. But it's not just a narrative. And I really want to talk to you about that because, you know, there's so much more than just a community with a shared vision or whatever other sort of like definitions. And, you know, everyone got super pedantic. It was really annoying. But there's this mutual excitement for DAOs and for DAO tooling, especially in the application of business. So I really want to dive into that. And there's a lot to get into with tooling, with governance, with the implications that it may have, socially. You know, the first DAO I ever contributed to was I got thrown in the middle of the Bankless DAO Discord, which in the peak of it was like an insane factory of productivity. It was so set like crazy energy. And so that really taught me how to DAO. I feel like Bankless DAO taught me how to DAO. And so I was like, this is not exactly what I want, but I need to go find my own DAO. And I went to go onto Seed Club, but that was the DAO where I learned how to DAO. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit more because I know that you were so early at Bankless DAO. You were one of the figures that like I'd see around in the Discord. So if you could talk a little bit more about your background and a little bit more about what gets you interested into DAO.
Yeah. My background is I went back to school for computer programming in my late 20s. And so I was working in a machine shop. I was a CNC, like computer-driven machinist. And I saw computers at the time as just like entertainment tools. Well, you play video games and watch TV and I was more interested in like symbolic logic and philosophy. Analytic philosophy had like pulled me in. And there was a moment in which I understood that fundamentally computers were giant like truth tables. Truth tables is a certain thing used in symbolic logic. And that's when I was like, okay, let me go deep on computers. And so I'm in the factory reading printed Wikipedia articles on programming languages and just went crazy. And so now I was like lost my mind on it, went obsessed. And then went back to school for computer programming. So I was a full stack developer when like you could suddenly program full stack with JavaScript. And then, I couldn't compete with people who've been programming since they were, 13 or something. So I eventually evolved into more of like a IT project manager, agile coach, and, kind of like organization design. How do you get 8 IT teams, feature teams to deliver at a faster pace because it's not so straightforward. There's a rule where if you add more developers to a late project, it's even later. So there's like all these techniques to do that. And so I was doing that and I was coaching 8 teams at UPMC Enterprise, the largest medical provider in Pennsylvania. And I had lost interest in crypto for years because I was hype on Bitcoin, but I'm a programmer. I want to make stuff. And at that time, there was nothing to make with Bitcoin. It was like you held it, You bought drugs with it. You dodged taxes with it. I'm like, awesome, cool. But like, where's the fun? And so when I got exposed to DAOs via Bankless podcasts, via BDAO, Bankless DAO, I went in and like all these light bulbs went off. And I was like, instead of designing teams and a company and doing org design on paper with rules and processes and procedures, you could actually program it like code. And so I just went crazy. I wasn't married at the time. So I was like every spare second, sometimes I would do work meetings in earbuds and over top would be over ear headphones on another meeting because I couldn't separate them. And I was working the mute. My brains were leaking out of my ears. I went like so crazy on DAOs.
It's amazing.
That's insane. But you know what? Also relatable for anyone that was in the DAO world, it was like an insane time. All the contributors were just like buzzing with energy. I had someone else go into one of these discords and they were like, how do you do it all day? Like, I was like, I don't know. I'm like running on like Telegram messages and Discord messages. I'm just like in it. It was
perfect timing. It was perfect timing too. It was like the bull run and I got super lucky on a few plays. Like during that time, there was a time, not because I was smart, but because it's a bull run. Don't be confused, right? But I'd wake up and it's like, I'm 10,000 richer. And it was like the next day, next day again. If any day at the end of the day, I had the same amount as the beginning, I was like, this sucks. It was so crazy, you know?
Because if you contributed into those early DAOs, you were rewarded. You were rewarded and you'd wake up and I remember getting a couple of those being like, oh, wait, what? Okay.
Yeah.
And not because you're lucky, it's a bull run.
I think all three of us were members of Bankless DAO at some point.
Like a secret Illuminati of sorts in crypto.
Right.
Like there's a couple of projects where like everyone comes out of. That's definitely one of them.
They're called Black Flag now, by the way.
So many people you could go through. I mean, there's so many people plugged into such key places across crypto right now that all came from that era in Bankless DAO.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've called DAO tooling the business infrastructure of the 21st century, right? What does that mean to you? How do you see it playing out? What elements need to be ripe for that to happen?
Yeah, so I think, I don't say this as a criticism, but just as a necessary self-reflection, that the previous generation of DAOs, the emphasis was on like a direct democracy, you know, community makes decision on everything. Everything's a big vote. And, you know, it was simplistic, right? It's a giant multi-sig and token-gated channels, which was cool, right? But I think the DAO movement and DAO fans, we limit ourselves if we say like, this is the only thing that DAOs can be. They are cooperatives, they're nonprofit, and, you know, we need to get like the world's businesses to kind of turn into this. I think it's a miss. It's kind of like if I made some kind of new programming language and I was like, this is what you can make. And it's like, well, it's a programming language. Return complete. You can make anything imaginable. And we actually open the doors a lot more if we say, you know, you can make even a traditional org structure with DAO tooling and then talk about kind of what the advantages of that are. And it's a lot more challenging because before you'd be like, hey, DAOs are necessary. So we have this egalitarian democracy, you know, all this. But if you say, oh, well, you know, and people said this during that time, if you suggested, hey, let's build like a traditional org using DAO tooling, like, what is even the point? No, let's throw him out, you know?
We're trying to get away from that, yeah.
Yeah. But it's actually cool. Like, and you don't have to think about this like corporate meat grinder vision. Just think of like lean, aggressive startups.
Efficiency, man. Efficiency.
Yeah, a lot of people just wanted to completely reject everything, and that went down to all the way down to business operations, which you don't have to throw the entire
Can't do that.
playbook
Like
out.
branding is one where like you don't need to be doing that. Like when you start doing that, like I don't want to talk ill of anything, but there are some DAOs that we may have been a part of that the branding just deteriorated to nothing, and because of just too many people having input on something and then someone just making a decision later, right? So things like that, I think just don't vibe with that all-in decentralization. or die, even though my slogan is DeFi or die, there are some things where, you know, I think that we need to step back and like just reevaluate it, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the challenge, I think, is interesting. Like, okay, what's the value prop of DAO tooling? Maybe DAO's not a good word anymore. Maybe use DAC. DACs even came before DAOs, decentralized autonomous companies or corporations. What's the value prop then? And now we have a challenging question to ask. We have to think deeply about that. And, you know, I'm not quite done with it, but I have this idea of like DAO skeuomorphism. You guys remember skeuomorphism? It's the idea when you make it. Skeuomorphism is the idea of like you have a notes app and it still looks like a leather binder with like stitches and the paper still looks like that yellow paper you can tear off. It looks like the old thing. Now, there was a period in user experience, user interface history where people came out and they're like, down with skeuomorphism. We want totally arbitrary. We don't need to be tied. But then what they found is users didn't know how to use the thing. There was too great of a continuity between what they knew before and this new weird thing. Hey, the calculator is like a diamond, 3-dimensional spinning, and I pick the color to do calculate. Well, what the heck are we doing? You know, so skeuomorphism, it touches on that continuity that's actually useful. And so when we think about DAOs, I think we can swing the pendulum back in the middle and talk about like, what's the skeuomorphism with DAOs? And say, hey, there's a bank account, multi-sig. There's board of directors, governance contracts. There's access badges like HATS protocol. There's budgets, Zodiac and other tools. And then there's stock 2.0. Old stock is like you hold it and you hope the price goes up. That's like stock market. New stock is like, oh, this can pay dividends autonomously via a protocol or guarantee governance that no one can change their mind on. And so this is like something cool that people, and if people evolve beyond that, wants to build, you know, spaceships and all, then great. But people need to hear some that they have some reference point to understand, you know?
Well, that's why we always get those like derivative kind of products, right? That we see in Web3 too. It's like the Uber of crypto, or you know, like all of that. It's a good tactic, and but for some reason, I feel like the DAO community didn't want that, which is odd a little bit. But I totally know what you mean. They were very resistant to this idea of adopting traditional models and adapting them with this tooling to make it more efficient.
Well, you know, that's the thing. Like, I think it's reasonable that it was rejected because there's always this historical pendulum swings of like, and then also for a movement, if you want to build a movement, you have to have a shared enemy. If you don't have a shared enemy, there's no energy. The enemy was corporate meat grinding, highly architected corporations. And so I'm not sure without that shared enemy, we would have even had like all the energy in that thing. But I think we can evolve to swing it the other way and see what we can get with a different approach, you know, with this next iteration of the DAO movement, you know?
Yeah, I think the whole entire crypto industry, I mean, came from that shared enemy mentality. It's only natural that it kind of jumps into, you know, that space. I'm interested. So have you heard of like leveraged votes? It's where you can borrow voting. I think Paladin did something like this where you can borrow against like a margin for voting and governance. Have you heard of anything like that? Have you seen anything like that? Have you seen it work at all?
I know for a while, I got exposed to something called public choice theory, which is deep, man. And it gets into it and it's like, hey, guess what? Even politics is economics. It's all bought and paid for. And it doesn't even say so in a way that's like, hey, it's all bad or whatever. It's just acknowledge the way it actually works. From there, I started wondering, like, why don't we have more explicit kind of bribery in governance, crypto governance? And I guess there was some bribery like protocols where you basically, you can pay delegates to vote a certain way, right? And I think one's called like hidden hands as direct bribery. And then a new one that popped off, they take a slightly different take. And this one popped off like, a week, 2 weeks ago, is called, Lobbyfi. Lobbyfi, they say,
nice.
Hey, I'm dead serious, dude.
Nice.
And listen, this is how big it is. Lobbyfi, in a matter of days, became the top, like, influencer in Arbitrum DAO. This is like last week, right?
Wow.
And so what they do then is instead of paying delegates directly, they act as their own delegate, but they vote in the way that people like pay for them to vote. So they're like, we're an advocacy and a lobby entity, not bribery. There's a difference. Now, some people say there's no difference, but either way, I think it's interesting. I mean, if people say it shouldn't be that way, the world shouldn't work like that, you know, take it up with the universe, build a mechanism that precludes that. But if that does happen, better to have it out in the front, obvious what you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's not pretend that MEV doesn't exist. You make a framework to manage it, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's what I get so mad when people are like, well, this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, there's ways to fix it. If you see a problem, there's ways to make a thing that doesn't do the thing that you're trying to avoid. Like, you know, there's like ways that you can, instead of just complaining about it, there's tools to go make it happen. Go do it.
Yeah. And I like the hacker mindset. I mean, like I've had that mindset for a long time being in crypto. I think because even before programmers into the 2600, like the hacker movement, like free Kevin Mitnick, who went to prison for hacking. He was the best hacker in the world, hands down. Bill Clinton put him in solitary confinement for the first year of his jail because they were convinced that he could launch nuclear missiles from a touch tone phone. This is the hacker era, man. It was awesome, right? He was listening into the feds who were trying to catch him on their morning meetings. He was on the call too. This is how badass Kevin Mitnick was, right? And like when the Snowden revelations came out of like all this spying and their secret backdoors, my initial response was, I can't believe this is happening. I was like, hey, how do I get that same access?
Right.
It's like the hacker mindset, you know?
Yeah, hackers have always had a special place in my heart.
Yeah, that whole movement of hackers. I wrote, you know, an article about hackers and just how much I love them and what their ethos comes from and like the computer history that kind of led up to that. And one of those movements is the cypherpunk movement. And I know that you're also such a fan of the cypherpunk. So maybe how does that sort of love of cypherpunks play in with toolings as you start to think about these frameworks? How does that kind of interplay together? Because I know we always think about this. If you're a cypherpunk, a true one never goes away.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. I you know, one thing to take from the cypherpunks is that punk. It's the anti kind of rules, pro freedom, catch me if you can, digital wizard, get ahead or around the system, no matter what the system is, whether it's a board game or computer system or legal framework. The cypherpunks started crypto. I mean, people forget this. Satoshi Nakamoto is a product of the cypherpunks. If you go to Nakamoto Institute, it's all the literature that built on previous literature and the authors and the mindset. And even the cypherpunks were like the digital version of Austrian economics. And so if you start with Austrian economics, the marginal revolution, Mises, Hayek,
Yeah.
They built up all Milton Friedman's son, like all these super, you know, libertarian, crypto-anarchists, anarcho-capitalists, you know, all this stuff. This is what kind of, we've taken a big left turn from that in current like digital assets.
Yeah, I hate it.
Crypto.
100%.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm the
ignoring.
guy that hate it. Sorry.
Yeah. It's such a different vibe. It is. I'm a part of a meetup. We meet every couple months in Cleveland here. And even a lot of the groups there are more than like the digital asset side or whatever. And I'm like, I'm like the total punk of the group. And sometimes I'm like, do I even fit in here anymore? What are we doing? You know, it's like, it's very fun.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of those with you.
But there's been some calls to come back to cypherpunk ethos, but it's important to understand like what that ethos was and what that could mean for us today, you know, and it definitely wasn't reverse engineering existing laws about securities laws and saying, oh, here's how we make a thing. You know, Satoshi Nakamoto, he didn't sit around and say like, what was allowed and then write the Bitcoin white paper. It was like, what is possible through pure cryptography. And at the time it was highly questionable. I was like, is this even legal to launch a currency? It wasn't, by the way. We forget that, right? And the same way, if what it means for DAOs is like, let's start building mechanisms based on pure mathematics and incentives, and then reference what is supposedly allowed after, not before. Pure anonymity is a big part of that. I mean, new protocols are founded now, and like the first thing they do is create some big foundation and go on a speaking tour. And it's like, well, now they literally can't do anything questionable because they'll snatch them up and take them to jail.
Yeah, I always think about that when they're completely doxxed and they're shouting out for total freedom and anonymity. Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? But I've asked some people about this, the people that do this, and they're like, someone has to go out there and speak about it. But
yeah,
it's a tough position. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, I get it, and in a way, if you see kind of the history, one of the huge priorities for the cypherpunks was true anonymity, like privacy, and we have pseudo anonymity on the current blockchain, like no one knows these two wallets that sent money from one to the next, but they can see that money was sent, and if they can attach your identity to one, then they got you, right? The idea of like true privacy where no one can even see, you could write on-chain business logic that's private, or we could exchange funds in a kind of on-chain but private way. That technical limitation has caused all of crypto to go in a certain direction, but it's not going to be that way for long. ZK puts all that on its head.
Exactly. The advancements in ZK, especially in like the DID sector, the digital identity sector, that is I've been waiting for so long for this to come to fruition. I feel like, and it's finally going to have its moment. So I'm excited for identity because people don't understand that it's in every aspect of everything that you do, especially when it's online and digital.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it used to be popular in the days, but we're so early. My wife, she used to roast me like, "You're so early," and it's like you say it so much. She's like, "Get out of here," right? But there's a sense in which, if you look at a larger time scale of like the next 5-10 years or whatever, it is cool. We haven't even got to the pure, privacy. And the thing about it, businesses are going to go on chain when they can have private business logic, and there's side chains and L2s and even off-chain ZK type solutions. All this is going to change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also wanted to talk specifically about community and governance and kind of like how the confluence of those kind of works with you, because when you add humans to the equation, everything changes, right? So in what ways do you think DAOs could reshape sort of this collective decision-making as it applies to these new business structures? Like, how do you add the humans into this business structure? Is it possible for a business to implement these structures without like completely overhauling everything? Because that can be traumatic for an org actually, and retention and all of this.
Yeah, I'm not a revolutionary on. I wouldn't tell a business that's just a standard operating business, be like, hey, get all of your customers to be making the decisions on how you run things. In fact, there's another side of the coin. On the one side, there's the wisdom of the crowds. On the other side, there is like the visionary leader, the benevolent dictator of the open source project. And if you lose sight of that, like it's kind of it's a destructive force to be like, let everyone decide on everything. If Disney opened the books tomorrow and said, everyone votes on what happens here, before the end of the week, Disney would be filled with adult content, gambling.
So degenerate, but you're so right. We talked about this too, right? Like you and I have had private conversations where like, absolutely, can you not open up the floodgates because what kind of chaos comes after that?
Yeah. So then the question is, it's more of an engineering question of like, in what way do you want it and what purpose does it serve? And it does serve a purpose, but I think it's a feature of a product. Like big brands like Nike, Mountain Dew, they have Starbucks, they have a way for their users to interact, but it's not driving boardroom decisions. It's more of reputation or choosing accidental characteristics of a product or using it to sense make on the things that product development that might be useful. I think there's a place there. As far as a deeper integration on DAO tooling, I would say just take crypto out of it and emphasize things that companies are already doing that are like winning, that they could double down on, like remote first. So many of these companies still are not doing, they may be remote, they're not remote first. That's a physical decentralization. Like GitLab wrote the playbook on how to do this, how to do it right. So you get more, not less, out of being decentralized. There was the movement of results-only work environment, ROW. I think it was Best Buy toyed with it, but didn't like stick with the idea of like, we don't pay you for your time, we pay you for results. So it's like everything is kind of commission, like bounty hunter style, and the value of that, the freedom and what people like about that. Contributor funnel, like who thought it was a good idea for companies to hire people after talking with them twice? Is that what you do when you like go on 2 dates and then get married? Like, no, you know what I mean? It's an evolving relationship. And so you can expand on that of like public bounties and internships, and DAOs are suited to this kind of graduated contributor funnel dynamic. And employee ownership. This is another one is, we have employee ownership in the trad world. It's called ESOP, employee stock option plan, right? And dude, it's savagely successful. It's like ex-employee commitment. These are all like on steroids with DAOs, but they still exist in traditional setting that we could push,
Yeah, exactly. Even when I talk about DAOs to regular people, I say, think of it as kind of like a co-op, but online. Like everything is tracked online. So it's just these analogies, and like I don't want to make it so foreign that it sounds scary. I don't go out saying it's a decentralized autonomous organization. If I'm talking to a normie, that's one way to get like a pie in my face, so to speak, Like no one wants to listen to that. They're like, God, here she goes again about her crypto shit.
Yeah.
And the terrible irony is that I was an Agile coach before Web3. I left Web2, that environment, into Web3. And when I come into crypto orgs, they are less strong on these like Agile principles than Web2 companies. Like they're worse.
100%.
And they often write themselves as if they're big crypto, whatever. It's like, just because you have a token doesn't make you crypto native, especially at the org level.
Especially at the org level. I think when I first started at Polygon, we were on the 2-week sprint, like Agile model, and it was very productive because, that was what you have to organize yourself in such a way, especially, if you're getting something done and you have a lot of things happening all at the same time. How do you get it all done? How do you make it happen? And this is like one of the only ways. I feel like in crypto, especially, it's like really helpful to know Scrum, Agile, all those sort of things.
Dude, yeah.
Especially for projects, yeah.
I feel like, I think I put out a meme one time, the kid and he's on the stairs and he's jumping to like the 6th stair from the first, right? Yeah. And it was like, DAOs are further up after you start with Agile, Lean, Agile, Randan-Hai, DAOs. And then people kind of just jump up there, but the foundation is deep there,
Yeah, people don't take time to learn their history and learn their lesson before they jump right in. They're just like, I think this is how it works. I don't know. Well, then or they don't do anything at all. They don't organize in such a way, and then it's like everyone's doing work, and it's too decentralized, and people have overlapping things that they're working. It's like then you just have this mess, and you don't get anything done at the end of the day. That's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. I never want to be, it's the man in the arena with the dirt and sweat on his face and the blood, right? This is the one. The critic can sit in the stands and say all this. I don't want to be that one. So it's like, put up or shut up, build groundbreaking, crazy stuff. And so that's where we want to drive,
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned a problem with overemphasizing voice, right, as a means of change. When the real free market communication exercises, lies in the exit, how can orgs think, about this more to complement or enhance their own governance frameworks? Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's this, textbook 2 ways to create change. The first is with voice. You get together, you create some sort of voter block. Enough people can come together and say they want a certain change, and you can influence it by convincing and talking people. But there is another way, which is like you just leave and you go somewhere that's doing it the way you think they should be doing it. And with DAOs, maybe just it was in their DNA in the previous cycle. It was all about voice. It was like, we'll have a vote, and, as long as a majority of people want a certain thing, then they'll do it. Bitcoin wasn't created by a committee of voters. Apple was not created by a committee. There are these breakout, visionary, decisive paths that people go out on the creator's journey and the founder's journey and do a thing. And if people don't like it or it produces something people don't want, then they can exit and go somewhere else. And the idea of always going this 51%, it's like what they call in crypto, it's mid-curve. You always end up with something that's kind of like, I guess it's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. You know, it's like, okay. There's even a saying, they're like, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. You know, it's like everyone kind of, you end up with this weird creature because everyone got their own concession, right? And so I really think exit is going to make a return, and that DAOs can be designed with this. Like Moloch or DAO House pioneered like the Moloch DAO framework. And in that, you always have something called rage quit, which is basically like you have shares. And if any time you're like, hey, this place is busted, I'm out, you can burn your shares for a pro rata amount in the treasury. And so it creates a very different dynamic. Do you stick and make changes, or do you burn and exit with your funds? And it's more like real companies, you know? And so, yeah, I think it's cool.
Well, I was going to say Moloch. That's so Moloch, though, because their branding matches their ethos. Like, they're so metal. They're so, like, take it or leave it. The ETH Berlin shirt, I have an ETH Berlin shirt from them, and it's just like I don't know. That was why I was drawn to it, and then I was like, oh, what are you actually doing? What is Moloch? Why do we have to slay it?
Yeah, I feel like going from multi-sigs and token-gated chats to Moloch DAO was like going from like high school physics to, you know, grad school, you know, astrophysics. It was like, yo, the design space just exploded on how you can do things and the possibilities. It was so cool. And a part of it may be also just a change in the whole ethos of, I mean, not to be hyperbolic, but civilization, and people are rediscovering kind of individual autonomy. And if you get American news and stuff, it's all like, democracy, democracy, we need democracy. And it's like, none of the founding fathers were for democracy. The whole idea was like every state in the United States would be its own little mini country. And if you didn't like one or they ran into the ground, you went somewhere else. So it was a way to create a market of competing regions. And then this is how you get like amusement parks. You want to go to Disney, or do you want to go to, you know, wherever the other amusement park is? And they try to compete. And if one of them screws it up and no one goes there, no one's buying their tickets or stock dumps, and they're like, oh gosh, you know, we got to do something different. So it's a very different
Disney
way
stuff going on. We got a lot of Disney. We got Disney. We got Universal Studios. I'm trying to go to Harry Potter World now.
Okay, good.
Super Mario World, yeah.
I'm not an amusement park guy, so I run out of the analogy. You know, I run out of gas.
I grew up in Florida, so it's the land of amusement parks. So yeah, it resonates with me a bunch.
Yeah, but the amusement park thing is such a great analogy, because our standards are so low when it comes to governments. We're like, yeah, this one's okay. I'm like, but isn't it an amusement park? Because they could be like an amusement park if there was more competition, you know?
I definitely want a DAO experience to be like an amusement park. Like I want to, but like it maybe it is in some way, because my stomach hurts at the end of the day.
Yo,
dude, like, can you imagine? They could get scary though. They could get real scary, like a Dark-Fi amusement park, or like a Monero themed,
like a private amusement park. Everyone's just in masks, walking around, bumping into each other.
Like literally, you can set up a vending machine, or it's some sort of game that does literally anything.
Dude, I think that's where we're going. I mean, a lot of this stuff is predicted by the book Sovereign Individual. Bitcoin predicted, fallen nation states predicted, individual like hyper autonomies predicted. And this idea of choose your own adventure on a whole nother level, it's happening, and it's going to get super crazy, I think.
Crazy is
Can't
good.
wait for that to happen. But no, I'm actually genuinely excited, because we talked about this during the meme coin episode. I was like, kind of the beautiful part of crypto is like everyone doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's just like how I view it, but I'm like, that's the original vision of crypto is everyone has their own, you know, use case to use it as they see fit. And I think there's something beautiful about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I also wanted to talk to you about specifically, you know, in the world of DAO still, we talk a lot about quadratic funding and how, you know, how to get projects funded. And when we were at Polygon, of course, we had like ecosystem grant programs and all of this stuff, especially the early days, you know, that were approved by the DAO that has been since then sunset.
The DAO died, yes.
The DAO died. But we talk about this like grant alignment problem, right? And it was something we worked on tirelessly. We tried different models, tried different things. You know, how do you get an ecosystem kind of like bootstrapped a little bit while still managing, you know, the extractive parts that you know are inevitably going to have? How do you design for MEV, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about the Q accelerator, the quadratic acceleration, because it kind of opened my eyes to like, you know, another really exciting part of this industry. So I would love if you could talk a little bit more about that.
And I would love to talk about it for as long as the tape will record. So it's like this. Check it out. Have you guys heard of the AI alignment problem? The AI alignment problem, it's like how do you make these super smart machines that actually have human thriving as a priority? Because if you have some super AI and you're like, make the most paper clips, eventually it turns the whole earth into paper clips and there's no humans left, right? And you're like, oh, too far, right? And to draw from that analogy, we say, hey, what's the grant alignment problem or ecosystem growth alignment problem? And what that is, what happens is every chain wants to or has to incentivize adoption. AKA, they have to give away money to get people to build there. Now you say, well, if they're great, they won't have to. I'm like, well, no, they have to because everyone else is too. So if you're not doing anything, everyone else is offering, you have to be competitive.
Exactly. Something.
Yeah. So what happens is they issue grants, you know, strategic grants, and projects get those grants, but the projects have to dump that native token in order to pay for their runway. And so the more incentives they offer, the more their token dumps, which means they have to offer more incentives. Okay. And then the projects are stuck in this grant farming pattern of sustainability, right? And then this third entity in this triangle of brokenness is communities or end users. And they either get nothing out of the deal or they get reminded to donate to their favorite projects via like quadratic funding type stuff. Or eventually when the token does become available, it's been totally vampired by VCs. And you're like, wow, I got the token at a $500 million valuation and it's going to drop by like 50% in the first week. So it's just like total crap all the way around. And so what QAC is it's a rethinking of that entire system. Honestly, the inspiration came out of just an obsessive, like several months of study in Austrian economics and being like, it's all back to incentives. It's all back to what are the incentives? What do people want? And suddenly the light bulb went off. And it resulted in this idea called protocol sponsored tokenization or PST. And the way it works is this. Jack, you have a project. You're like, hey, I want a grant. And you're like, and I'm the protocol. I want you to build here. I say, hey, instead of giving you a one-time grant and you needing to come back and get more, we're going to put money in a token bonding curve, which creates a token for you. Okay. Now you have a token and we're going to facilitate your community to be able to get that token. And so we've created net new value in an ecosystem. Austrian economics argues that new value is created by entrepreneurs. And tokenization is kind of the crypto native form of incorporation. You know, that's the thing.
Quickest, fastest way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and the name, this QAC is really drawn from the meme of the EAC meme, like the accelerationism and like put AI on everything. And it's not about energy conservationism, but energy abundance. Instead of trying to use less electricity, let's build like nuclear reactors. We're going to have so much energy pumping in everything. You know what I mean? So it's kind of this abundance mindset. Well, we're going to make a Dyson sphere and go to the edge of the universe. And so we thought, let's do this QAC because it's like a token accelerationism. Tokenize everything and let the market determine its value. And so, I got together with Griff and Tam. They were from the Token Engineering Commons, Common Stack, and they had done so much work on token bonding curves and all the way the Zargum, like all this deep science. And it was like, how exactly would this work? And this QAC mechanism came out of that. And then we took it to Polygon, and Polygon was like, you crazy sons of bitches, let's go do it, right?
Good.
And so we built the whole thing and ran the first season last year, raised hundreds of thousands of Matic, like net new inflows, and created 8 million TVL. So this was like, instead of token dump, all the tokens were locked. Instead of costing money, it created money. Instead of dumping on TVL, it drove it. And then we just got accepted in the second season. And we just announced yesterday or the day before, season 2 double. We're going to tokenize like 15 teams.
Oh my God, that is a wild story.
It's so
I
hyped.
was so excited because as I was reading through it, as I was looking through it, I was like, man, I want you to come on here and talk about this.
It's so
cool.
hyped. It's even hyped the way it went down because I had diagrams and ideas and I was like, man, it's like the chains are nations in or states or whatever, right? And even states, what they'll do is they'll approach Amazon and they'll say, Amazon, build your factories here. We actually won't charge you any taxes because we know jobs are going to be created, right? They compete with other regions to attract business because they know the business attracts end users, consumers in the same way that chain is doing that. They're like, listen, we'll give money, we'll sponsor your crypto native incorporation because this allows other people to buy into your vision. It's economy building. It's a different
Amazing.
way. So I had all these ideas and I contacted Griff from Giveth and never talked before and said, hey, can I get 15 minutes? I shot him the idea. He's like, man, let me think about this. This is interesting. It was on Friday. On Saturday, he sends me a voicemail. He's like, hey, there's like some issues here, but I think they could be worked through. Sunday, hey, man, I think this has legs.
I love
Monday, the last message, he's like, what are you doing right now? I'm going to fly to you right now.
Let's go. Let's
Kid you
go.
not. Kid you not. I was like, bro, I'm picking you up at the airport. That's what I'm doing.
Let's go. Let's
Freaking
go.
shit. Listen, I shut the computer lid. He showed up the next day. I told Polygon, peace out. I'm out the rest of the week. He showed up. We filled the room. It was already full of whiteboards. I bought 2 more before he got there. We did nothing. My wife's coming in. You guys want to eat? They're like, no time for food. 4 days. We went hard. And this is
Love
how
it.
it was born.
God, I love it. I wish I was
That
there.
energy is so needed. It is so badly needed
Really
because
is.
that is how you get shit done.
Dude,
I love
was so-
that.
It was crazy. And then in that, he's like, listen, you have to meet Tam tomorrow. Tam. And he's like, she was the thing that turned crazy talk into executable plans with budgets and resources and contracts and like the
We
stuff
all
that
need a
like you guys
Tam.
even listen. On like day 2, Tam's on the call. He's like, listen, we're here in Justice's room. Blah 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 blah. And she's like, okay, all right, hey. And then that's how like the 3 amigos of us were born. And then like immediately we started meeting every day. And that's how it's been for the past year.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. We all need this. We all need this energy. And that's incredible that you guys have that like immediate synergy working together.
Yeah,
Love
it's been awesome. Like then we had a relationship with Inverter, which is like the real like token bonding curve, Lego pieces. How do they go together? And then we went crazy on the white paper and got that out. And it was like, cool, my name on a white paper. I remember the first
Epic.
time Bryant B. Peets from Bankless DAO, who's like co-authored this Bankless DAO proposal. I almost had tears in my eyes. I was like, I'm a proposal. Our proposal passed in the DAO. I have arrived. And it's a few years later, you're like on the white paper. Yes, it just feels so good to do stuff.
My God,
So
no,
cool.
that's incredible. These are things that we strive for. That's incredible. And yeah, congrats on your first white paper.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
thank you. It's cool because if you really crunch the numbers on this PST protocol sponsored tokenization, I think what just happened with the meme coins, I don't think people realize what the dynamic and what the play is, but they will. With the changing regulation, it's not just going to be memes or code that's tokenized in the form of AI. It's going to be real teams, and they're going to use this magic bonding curve entity, probably going to get the Nobel Prize in economics of this token bonding curves, how they work. And we're kind of at the front of that, of knowing the traps and how to avoid them. So it's very exciting.
The memes are like, we talked about this on our meme coin episode. And, historically, memes have really been where a lot of technological advancement happens. And it's like you get on LinkedIn and you hear all these new crypto people talking about how horrible pump.fun is and how terrible all this was. And, like you can just spot people that were from the cypherpunk era, and you can spot people who are literally just here because an ETF launched by their approach to meme coins and what they see in them. Like, you have a lot of legitimate builders that are a little bit upset about it. But when things like this happen and you start talking about how these bonding curves can be leveraged in a completely new way, or like how Safe Moon split yield into different things, it becomes a whole different conversation. But people are so short-sighted. All they see are like the negatives of things. It's like, it's always been there, this negative of crypto, people's perception negative, and it's just carrying through with all these new institutional investors and things like that. So that's something we talked about before, Justice, and it's really great to hear, a perspective that's coming out specifically of these new types of meme coins, like specifically like Solana, where there is some innovation that's coming out from that. It's not just empty garbage like a lot of people are thinking. You've really you're really thinking more about it, man. I love it.
I'm a fan. Like, I think people it's easy to kind of get stuck in an ecosystem echo chamber. But I mean, if you look at Solana, and I love Ethereum, Ethereum's like my ecosystem, but if you look at Solana, and it's like 400 millisecond block times. I mean, like, as a Web2 developer or whatever, bro, that's not 1 second, 2 seconds, that's not 5 minutes, that's not 3 blocks, it's 400 millisecond block times, dude. And their consensus mechanism uses a proof of history. Suddenly, like, blocks are ordered cryptographically. That whole side of an MEV is taken off. Very impressive. And you think about too, like piracy and all. Remember, it was like piracy was a pretty big deal for a long time, and it got nuked. It didn't get nuked via better DRM. It got nuked because, frankly, it's just easier to spend 99 cents from the couch.
Exactly.
To buy the movie.
Exactly.
Then to get up and go download another, stream it to the TV. You're like, I ain't got time for all that crap.
Pay for convenience,
Yeah, there's so like on the super legit side of crypto, awesome. Digital assets, ETFs, rocket, awesome. But there will always be the pirate base side, and that's going to attract a different group. And I like that side more, but I respect both.
I respect both. I think meme coins in particular are like the stress testers. Like, they're the ones that are like literally trying to break shit. And I think we have learned a lot from them. And I think that's why we're continuing to see things that are a little bit more innovative and just more interesting, quite frankly, than a straight rug pull.
Yeah. And, I think part of the reason for the meme coin movement, it wasn't because, like, gosh, we're so excited to tokenize memes, is because people were afraid legally to tokenize real projects. Because those are the only two ways. You either started a foundation, got lawyers from McKinsey and all the big four consulting, you did all this, you got big VC, and then you did a token launch. Or, like, you couldn't because you couldn't afford that stuff. You couldn't just launch a token because that's like super regulated and illegal, but you can do fair launch memes. Regulation has been nuked. We're in a whole new world, man. President launched his own personal coin the day before it's being sworn in.
That was so wild.
I think, and this is the QAC bet, real teams are going to tokenize, and it's going to be awesome. Fair launch, real project.
I love it. So as you describe all of this, like I can see that you're making things, a lot easier for good builders, speaking on that note, to take their projects like further. So how are some other technical advancements helping ease users into this world, stuff that you're working on, specifically about account abstraction and some of those related things?
This was probably the highest point of friction for us in season 1 of QAC, because our season 1 was on zk-EVM. It's a Polygon chain, but not a lot of activity or users there. So suddenly to say, hey, you need to add this chain to your wallet, which is probably not added. You also need to get these 2 tokens that after you're on that chain, it was like, oh my gosh, people were confused. It was high friction. And so we're doubling down on season 2 on chain and token abstraction. And I think this is where everything is going to go, where user doesn't know what token you're using behind the scene. They don't care what chain. They basically can just go to your app and use it. And it does like atomic swaps in the background. It'll jump from chain to chain. If you want to spend OP, but we need to accept, pull in the background, we don't care. We'll take it, swap it. And so to like streamline all that, and then also allow for like fiat onboarding. So like, we don't care what token. We don't even care if you don't have a token. Good. And then also in browser wallets. It's still crazy to me. And in fact, I don't use as many tools as I used to in the past, because it's like, dude, you just discovered this app 5 seconds ago, and you're going to connect your like main ENS wallet just random. Like, man, that's crazy. Yeah. But this idea of like, you use a new app, creates an in-browser wallet, fiat onboarding, you don't care the token. This is the point of creation. It's the Bezos mandate. Start from the user. Everything else is technical implementation. Amen. You know what I mean? It's extra. So I think that's going to be big. And then the last piece is probably natural language interaction, and this is the AI stuff. I mean, a lot of the attention is AI is going to wake up and be super intelligent and all this. I'm like, just put it more practical. It's natural language. What are you trying to achieve? You can allow the user just to say what they want,
And I think people have changed the way that they interface with AI a lot. A lot of people just talk into the, straight into ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever they're using. Like, I know I do. I just talk straight into that. AI probably has like all of my stupid thoughts in one place. I'm so excited by it. But yeah, the interfaces start to change with those sorts of things. And the natural language, I use Notebook LM, and they are able to generate a podcast. Are you familiar with it? It's a great tool. The podcast at first it was very uncanny, and then they made a joke in one of them together, and they had like the AI rapport, and I was like, this is actually really funny to me. It's not, and why did they learn that? They learned that because we as humans need to hear a little joke every now and again. We need to like have that like human part of it, or it doesn't stick. I'm not anti having more of a natural language model, more of the human qualities in robots, let's say, or AI rather. Some people get mad if you don't differentiate the two. But essentially, like, this allows us to learn better from these tools. We're learning from these tools. Not everyone wants to read a wall of text. No. Sometimes they want to interact with it or ask the podcast questions, which you can do, which you couldn't do in a normal, podcast like this.
Yeah, honestly, it was like for a long time, people talked a lot about intents, crypto, Web3 intents. And the idea is like, describe what you're trying to do. Don't make the user go through and actually understand the implementation details of all these steps that need to happen. And when you add LLMs to that, large language models, it's the final piece of like, what are you trying to do? And even some platforms from major crypto, like analytics websites, just in the past 2 weeks have offered, hey, basically now query the entire blockchain transactions token, query it in natural language, and next, if not already now, basically connect a wallet and you can say certain intents you want to happen. Like, hey, what are the top such and such? Buy this when it gets there. And so it just completely revamps what we think of as the interface. And it's early. It's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. We advance, forward all the time. I feel like AI just moves at a breakneck pace. I mean, crypto moves at a breakneck pace, but I think actually, you know what? I think AIs and crypto, I know people are very excited about it for a lot of different reasons, and so am I. But I really feel like crypto needed maybe didn't need a counterpart, but it's the adoption of it will come faster with the sort of necessity that AI brings, right? They're kind of like a little bit symbiotic, the AI and crypto, because one needs attribution and one
Yeah.
is pure attribution.
Yep.
So I'm excited about that intersection for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Going back to DAOs, in the past we've talked about them not being in this binary sort of place. So there's sort of like a spectrum between business and social. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the social side, because there are a number of social DAOs that I'm a part of. And, you and I have shared this mutual sort of frustration when people are sitting around not doing anything and wasting potential. And I think a lot of social DAOs don't know how to take advantage of the power in the individual, right? Like, I talk about this a lot where, yes, I'm a community person, right? One that deeply, deeply, deeply understands people, but I know that the individual has so much inherent power in their own that it really frustrated me when I'd go into these places and they wouldn't have a place for me to put that energy and that want for contribution. I really had to fight them to contribute. So I want to talk a little bit more about social protocols versus, the social DAOs, because I know that you have different thoughts about how people can shift the way that they're thinking, in order to take advantage of some of these toolings. So if you can talk a little bit more about social protocols, I think that's another super interesting visionary thought that I loved from your writing.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because it's one of the things that I feel most proud of as far as insight. And I think it was my best talk I ever gave was in Paris on protocolizing tokenized communities. And I'm just it's great to write and put stuff out, because even if no one sees it or whatever, you kind of crystallize the thinking around the thing, But this arose because there was this hard division being made between the social DAOs of people getting together and doing cool stuff and enjoying the vibes, and then the protocol DAOs of it's a DeFi, borrowing and lending, and neither should they ever meet. And it was it started to dawn on me that you could actually evolve a social into a more structured, and this is the idea of protocolizing tokenized communities or social DAOs, and the importance of doing it. Because if you want to retain the vibes and the good stuff, it helps to be able to identify what's making that possible and put guardrails in. Because it's all fun and games until someone comes in with maybe an overly strong personality, and then they kind of hog up all the natural space. Or you didn't realize, but having certain structures in place allowed for more intimate communication. So the idea was it started with this premise, that any systematic, repeatable process is amenable to protocolization, and that many things are operated in unconscious scripts. My wife, she's from Europe. When we go to restaurants, she hates a script in the restaurant. She wants to just talk to the server, all this stuff. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe we change tables halfway through because the light's better over there. And I'm a script man. I'm listen, I don't want none of that. I want the Applebee's script. I know exactly what's going to happen from the start. It's predictable, right? And so the idea of and then with Bankless DAO was hey, let's take the way things work right now and put it in a constitution. Here's how things work. Now let's convert small pieces of this constitution into kind of mechanisms so that they maintain that structure. And you kind of go from, a handbook to community cycles, game levels and different components that work together. And now it's basically the idea. One inspiration for this too was Nouns DAO. It was cool, man. A new NFT gets auctioned off every day. It's it's like a protocol, but in a sense too, it's a community thing. And like, could you extrapolate out from that and do something? And so let's show the continuum from community to pure protocol and everything that can happen in between. You know, some people will say, I was trying to introduce the machine into our human side. It's like, it's inevitable, accelerate. You know, it's either you just want to do it nice or bad, you know?
Exactly. It's like, it's here to help you. I think it's just because it's new. People have aversion to change. So, you know, that's probably where that lies. But for me, I'm like, let them figure out my life for me a little bit easier.
Yeah. And there's all types, you know, I'm a ENTJ on the Myers-Briggs. So like, I tell Griff, I'm like, I'm in crypto because it's a way to program the universe. I'm not in for egalitarian democracy, okay?
Well,
I want to machine crunch.
No, but that doesn't even exist
Skynet.
in these structures. I think like that's the other thing, right? Like DAOs were supposed to be like this moment where we all had like equal say and equal this and equal that. And I was like, that's not really how things work, actually. But it's a really nice idea. It's like nice to think about, you know? It's nice, but that's not the reality.
Yeah, and like, you know, if it's a black pill to sun, if that's what people want and you want to simulate it as a part of the product, then go. You know, like you freaking go one level up, make a simulation of it if that's part of the product. All for it, you know?
True. And I think like maybe in tiny, you know, circles, maybe it is egalitarian and they can do it on their own way or whatever. But like the whole and large of the way world works, not egalitarian, and it like wouldn't even work that way, right? Again, there'd be too much chaos. Disney would have like weird proposals for weird content. No.
You touched on something. There's the Dunbar limits, you know, and that's why in a small village, can you walk around and jack everybody's food out of their window? Well, no, you got to look at them in the eye. On the internet at a different size, can you do that? Yeah. Good. Government does that to us every day. So it's like, respect the Dunbar limit, you know?
Absolutely.
That feels like a really good time. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Are you ready,
Justice
Are you
doesn't know
ready?
what he's ready for.
I hope.
Okay. It's Fish Fry time. Every episode, we like to dive deep into the mind and the passion of our guests. So, Justice, what's your current spiciest take on the market or the industry as a whole right now? And man, it's you. So it could be anything. Do your thing. Let us know.
Man,
what's up.
Don't blame me. You asked for spicy, so I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you, man.
Let's go.
I think if the Ethereum, like Ethereum Foundation, even Vitalik himself, I think if they don't return to a more kind of crypto anarchy ethos, that Ethereum's like in big trouble, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And like, I love Ethereum. We wouldn't be here without Vitalik, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, in January, when he's writing papers saying we should put spyware in all the AI chips to limit like AI development, that doesn't feel like cypherpunk to me.
That doesn't even feel good to like even say out loud.
I'm just saying,
he did like the opposite of ayahuasca, I feel like.
He did the opposite of ayahuasca, or he was like, I'm afraid, and everybody.
Yeah, and so like, there's undercurrents in Ethereum community, like the Milady and all these like crypto cults and stuff that are like, hey, let's get back. And I think there's something there, but you know, I want to get back to the kind of anonymous, who cares what securities laws are? You know, we're not KYCing everyone and their brother to give money because somebody says, and like, we're not launching tokens that are just exit liquidity for VCs. Like I'm for kind of a more aggressive, punkish, I call it like middle finger bullet points of priorities, you know, like
for each bullet point is actually just like a middle finger every single
It is. It's like anonymity, you know, uncontrolled, you know, unlimited tokenomics, second one. And then, you know, yeah, stuff like that.
We need to go get a beer immediately after this. You're
We're
my
all
new
riled
favorite
up
person.
now,
Like
dang.
I knew you were a great person. Now you're like my new favorite person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is we keep having these guests on and doing these spicy takes, Brett, and we're the ones that are the spiciest of all because we're like, yeah, everybody's right. All of these spicy takes, like, and it's very similar, right? And you know what's great? Maybe it's the curation of people that we have on here, but everyone seems to be aligned that we bring on that we need to return to these cypherpunk principles.
We get great people on here.
And this like actual like what are we doing here? We are continuing a legacy of computer scientists that came before us, and we have a duty to see that through, to see the privacy through. They knew in the 90s that this was going to be a problem. What are we doing about it? We have the technology, so I 100% believe in moving forward in this way.
What's super freaky is if you look at certain of the biggest influential thought leaders in Ethereum's like culture or whatever, like Glenn Weil, the stuff that they were for, the only way Ethereum would achieve those goals is if it becomes the CBDC, the government digital agency. Yeah. So it's the two paths. You either go the Austrian economics, free market, YOLO, or you go this like central planning, controlled economy. Let's make sure the rich don't get richer. We'll spread it out like kind of Keynesianism. Like those are the paths. So yeah.
No, stay the way of the high-tech Hayekians. Awesome. Well, Justice, it has been fantastic to have you on. I loved diving into everything that we got into. I'm glad that we were able to touch upon all these different things that you're getting yourself into over at Polygon Labs. How can people follow you? Where would you like people to go for all of our listeners to try and find you?
I would say two things on Twitter, Singularity Hack. And then on my mirror is, it's operator.mirror.xyz. And I put my heart and soul into that writing, even if no one else reads it, into the art. As an artist, that is my artistic expression. That's what gives me good feelings, is to produce like insight and present it in a way that's emotionally and visually like compelling,
And you do an amazing job. I am subscribed and I love the way that you write. And it's one of the reasons why I was super excited to just get to talk to you every day at Polygon. That was awesome.
Thank you
and
very
have
much.
You come on. Thank you again. We appreciate you so much.
And that will wrap up our episode of Cryptocurrents. Please remember to like and subscribe and follow us in the chat next time. Until then, keep it popping.
See ya.